Yeah, please kindly join us on the stage. Warm welcome to you, ma'am. Inviting Mr. Dhoya, Snijders, Head of Innovation, Embassy of the Netherlands. Mr. Sameer Guduru, Director, Digital Economy and Aerospace and Defense at USIBC. I invite Mr. Hirokazu Mori, CXO Advisor at SPACETIDE Foundation. And I would also like to invite Mr. Gurvinder Chauhan, CEO and Founder, QSTC. International cooperation in space, and the time duration for the session is only 40 minutes. I would request our distinguished chair and moderator, Professor Chaitanya Giri, Associate Professor, Flame University, Editor Interstellar_Go at Consultants RIS, to kindly conclude the session in 40 minutes from now. So, thank you very much indeed. Handing over to you, sir, to kindly carry forward the proceedings.
Really exhilarating discussions and deliberations that we've had in the main sessions, as well as in the bylines when we all met at coffee, at the tea time and whatnot. So SATCOM Industry Association has been really proud of the turnout that this particular event has garnered. And what has made it worthwhile is the international participants that we've had. We've had participation from various countries, Netherlands, Australia, Japan, United Kingdom, United States, from the European partners, France, so on and so forth. So space cooperation and international space cooperation is a worthwhile exercise when it comes to people-to-people diplomacy, when it comes to government-to-government diplomacy, and things are really getting galvanized. Especially here in India right now, the excitement has reached its pinnacle with India signing the Artemis Accords. There is a great promise in there, and that promise, that excitement is not only shared by those who are operating in the space sector, but also those who are wanting to get into the space sector. So the affinity for the entire ecosystem is only growing with each passing day. And we need to keep that momentum going for the affinity. Because there are so many sectors as of now, especially, let's say, the banking and finance sector, the insurance sector, the agriculture sector, irrigation. They are all looking for opportunity to get engaged with the space industry. And events like these help us a lot. And we are not only wanting to create opportunities for Indian companies here in India, but we are wanting our Indian companies to go international, make friends outside, make friends for human space flight, make friends for Earth observation, SATCOM, so on and so forth. And we are thrilled to have a really great gathering here. We have the Hirokazu Mori from Japan, from SPACETIDE company. We have a representation from Australia. We have Canada, Netherlands, as well as we have Sameer, who's representing USIBC. So without wasting much time, and since we have only 40 minutes, I'll invite our easternmost partner, Hirokazu.
So thank you for introduction. I'm Hirokazu Mori. I'm a CXO advisor to SPACETIDE Foundation. And if you're in the space industry, you may know that the SPACETIDE Foundation hosts conferences. Actually, it happened last week. We attracted like 1,500 people or so. And well, I basically advise the CEO, COO, and what SpaceTide does is basically helping government gather information in the space ecosystem in Japan. We publish industry report. We help Cabinet Office of Japan to do the space business competition called S Booster, and we also provide like an incubation like service to the winners of that competition hosted organized by Cabinet Office of Japan. Apart from that, we also host several events helping Japanese so big companies not in space industry to get into say space industry, and as a result several renowned companies like Sony, Toyota, those companies get in fact got into the space industry, right? And I'm happy to discuss what kind of opportunities we can explore with other countries in Asia and also in Europe as well. Yeah, thank you.
Namaskar everyone and g'day. My name is Caitlin Searle. I'm a Counsellor Science and Technology at the Australian High Commission here in New Delhi. If you're looking at your program and you're wondering where Leo Bremanis is, he's had to go away to an urgent meeting, so I'm filling in for him this afternoon.
Thank you, Caitlin. Gurvinder?
I'll go up there.
All right.
I prepared some text.
Okay. Perfect.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Gurvinder. I'm the CEO and executive for QSTC, but today I'm going to be representing Canada on behalf of Global Affairs. My colleagues are here. So I prepared some slides to give you an idea of figure what in Canada we are doing, and with respect to the collaboration with India specifically. So as you can see in a nutshell, since I have very little time, I'll try to be fast forward. So if you have any particular question, I'll be more than happy to answer. So as you can see the figures, like right now we have about, give and take about $6-7 billion worth of trade between India and Canada, which we both, like from a Canadian perspective and Indian perspective, we find it very low, keeping in view the diaspora we have in Canada and the technology we have in Canada, and we should be doing much more than this. So as you can see, it's only $6.6 billion has been invested by Indian companies in Canada right now. So there's a big collaboration in different sectors. So this is specifically focused on space industry. There are a lot of figures, but this is summary slide where you can see upstream we have about 0.95 and downstream 4.75. Out of this, we have about $3.2 billion export in the space only. And that includes both communication, remote sensing, and other hardware and software from space. So these are the sectors which we identified where we can work together with Indian companies, where we have a big collaboration possibilities like infrastructure, hardware, software, services, and then there are different areas. I'm more than happy to have an individual discussion. Since we lack the time, I'm going to respect the timing. And again, there's a value chain of the space industry, what you can see. We have upstream, government, domestic, and as well as the downstream export. And export-wise, we have about, right now, we stand about 3.5 billion instead of 2.1. This is last year's figure. And commercialized revenue, we have a 169% growth. So as you can see that we have a big potential for collaboration between Canada and India, and we have a big employment workforce there. And in fact, one of the largest workforce in Canada is the aerospace and space industry. And I'm not so sure if you are aware of the fact that Montreal is the third largest aerospace hub in the world after Toulouse and Seattle. And we have the largest manufacturing hub for aerospace. Secondly, we are also the largest hub for pharmaceutical, R&D pharmaceuticals, as well as gaming and artificial intelligence, specifically in Montreal area. So there are lots of areas where we have a potential of a collaboration between both countries. Skip this. So I have nutshell already explained to you that we have a big potential to collaborate in fintech, artificial intelligence, big data, data analysis, data mining, in-orbit testing, in-orbit transfer, auto driving, that also based on artificial intelligence. And then we have one of the most deregulatory bodies in Canada. So work is very easy there, and formation of companies to start the business takes a couple of days to the whole process to set up. And also, as you know, that we have one of the most flexible visa systems, or fast track system for the professionals and investors. And unlike down south in USA, we have much faster processes, and you don't have to wait for H-1B, and we have a permanent residencies, which makes easy for investors for a permanent future. So this is just to give you a landscape from the Canadian perspectives, that every year we have a big increase in the export year to year, and we also spend a lot of money on R&D. In fact, one of the biggest advantage to investment in Canada is the R&D credits and R&D funds, and various vehicle available to do R&D in Canada. Like we have a SRED credits, like for every dollar you spend, you get 25 cents back. And on top of it, then we have a federal and provincial taxes for R&D grants. And then we have a NCRT, that's another organization and vehicle available for you to do R&D in collaboration with them, and then they provide you additional funding to do some R&D and research in Canada. So there are a whole bunch of possibilities and a whole bunch of facilities available for any Indian companies or any companies who want to establish or do some innovative work, fintech work, or clean tech work in Canada. And we have immense facilities given by the government on both federal and provincial level. So again, I mentioned we have the biggest aerospace regions in Canada. Quebec and Ontario counts for about 75% of workforce in aerospace and defense. When I say aerospace, that includes the space, because we still not been able to define separately between space and aerospace. These are the main satellite strengths of our Canadian organization: communication, robotics, Earth observations, antennas. I will just go through the areas of collaboration here, universities, where we can have a very good collaboration. And most of these programs, we have already worked under Gita with most of the universities in India, and some of the private sectors in India are already involved in collaboration with universities and with the private suppliers. And these, we have a Canadian Trade Commissioner services available here in India. So we have about 8 offices here, and all the offices are listed here. And more than happy to support you. I have my colleague here, Cassandra. She's here based in Bangalore. Maybe if you can stand up, introduce yourself. And Vinay is New Delhi. He had to go unfortunately today, so he cannot be here. So they are here to serve you and provide any information, anything of you need. And this is our standard email. More than happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Guruvinder. I pass on the mic to Samir Guduru from USIBC.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's always a pleasure to be on a panel along with Chaitanya. And first of all, I thank the organizers for providing me this opportunity to be here addressing you all. So my focus will only be on the India-US bilateral and what is going on currently in the space sector. So first of all, the event is happening at an opportune moment where India has recently announced the new space policy 2023. Of course, a lot of details are still yet to be announced, but the initial discussions around a lot of private sector involvement in space is very heartening to see, and for a policy advocacy organization like ours, it definitely is a good news. Secondly, of course, in the recent state visit by Prime Minister Modi, the signing of the Artemis Accord and the fact that India is going to be partnering the International Space Station is already something of a major step in the bilateral relations between India and the United States. So that again is showcasing how there's a lot of momentum in the space sector. So as far as the activities that we are currently carrying out at USIBC are concerned, firstly, we are looking at operationalizing a commercial space joint working group between India and the US. So on the American side, we are trying to interface with NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and on the Indian side with InSpace, which has been given the job of being the new regulator under the new space policy in India. So we'll be doing a lot of joint work along with both these organizations as well as private sector, both in India and the United States. Apart from that, in the US and Washington, DC, on the heels of Prime Minister's visit, we conducted something called INDUS-X, which is a defense innovation bridge between India and the United States, where Indian and American startups came on the same platform, and a lot of discussions happening on collaborations and way forward for India, a lot more engagement in the defense and space sectors. And a lot of startups from the Indian side that participated in INDUS-X are also here. So I was pretty pleased to see that happening. Then, so this actually is under the Initiative on Critical and Emerging Technologies, which was launched by the USIBC, we being the thought leaders at the NSA level earlier this year in January. And a lot more other activities are also being planned as far as space tech collaboration is concerned. Apart from that, I think I'll just keep it short. I think once the new space policies details are going to come out, I think it becomes far more easier for international collaboration in the space sector. And I hope it is pro-business and will further deepen relationship in the space sector between various countries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I invite now Dhoya, Snijders.
I think I'll follow my Canadian. Let's put this up a bit. Am I audible? Yeah. Thank you, Chairman. Dhanyavad. Thanks for inviting us to this great platform. Mera naam hai Dhoya Snijders. I don't know if the pronunciation is good, yeah? I'm Dhoya Snijders. I'm the Science and Innovation Counselor at the Netherlands Embassy here. So I try to create more opportunities to collaborate on science, technology and innovation. We've got offices here in Delhi, but also in Bangalore, where my colleague Alina is, as well as in Mumbai. And space is becoming more and more important, I think, especially since 2019 and the reforms here in India. We've been really delving into this sector. And if we ask why we're working on this, I think for us it's just mainly, frankly, because it's a crisis. Not one crisis, there's a plurality of crises. I don't know, who of you was in Delhi last Saturday? Maybe I can see some hands. Who was here in New Delhi on Saturday? Hardly anyone. I don't know how you coped with the rain, but it was the worst rain that Delhi has seen since 1982. It was quite interesting to see from my house that kids were using the whole city as a swimming pool. They were jumping off the curbs and actually swimming in the water, which was also a bit polluted. And friends were sending me text messages saying, now for limited sale, we have got properties with an ocean view for sale here in Delhi and Gurgaon. But at the same time, it also is an indicator, right? At the moment in June, it's just established that it was the hottest month globally on Earth. At the same time, we've got many other issues around this with droughts, with shortages, a lot of impact on the human lives, on animal lives, on the environment. And in the Netherlands, and I think in India as well, we think that space technology holds many of the answers. So of course, they can be used for monitoring climate change, monitoring the extreme weathers. We use it in all kinds of water management applications and in the water management sector in general. But also we see space as a key component in the world's growing digitalization. So we can bridge the digital divide that is still going on between urban and rural and between different regional settings in the world with space technology. And in general, we think that space technology will play a big role also in the post-COVID-19 pandemic recovery. So I think all these crises and these possibilities gives us an agenda. And I think internationally we should be looking for problems together and seeing which problems can we tackle if we work together. So we try to have a framework which works on the main problems, the main societal problems that we see. So India and the Netherlands have already been doing this for quite some time, and also around space technology. We had our experts, our professors, our businesses sitting together in all kinds of round tables, and we came up with a framework that's called WA. We love the word WA here, WA, awesome, super, but for us it stands for water, agriculture, and healthcare. I see an old colleague already still knowing it, the WA agenda. So also within the space collaborations, we're trying to focus on these sectors and see what kind of steps we can set. The Netherlands, we have historically been quite involved in the space, especially the research setting. So we are a founding member of ESA, the European Space Agency, and ESRO, the European Space and Research Organization. ESTEC, which is the European Space and Technology Center, is also based in Noordwijk, a little town in the Netherlands, which is really worth a visit, also an ESA compound. And it has a very bustling startup and incubator setting around it. And now, in the last years, we see that about 250 space companies have flourished in this ecosystem. So we are working on all kinds of different expertises, but I think the main ones are small sats, emission monitoring, solar panels, rocket design, and we try to look for all kinds of collaborations with the big spacefaring nations, such as also India, of course. So we have now got a working arrangement with ISRO. We've got an MOU with them, and we're looking forward to all kinds of new collaborations. We're discussing also now with InSpace new research and development calls. We've got some MOUs between the IIRS, the IIST, so Indian top universities, and Dutch ones to work together, because we think this is very much low-hanging fruit to get student exchange, student mobility, but also work together on shared master programs, shared PhD programs. A lot of trade missions going on, for instance, last year in the Bangalore Space Expo, and now we're working very much on bigger research calls. So this year, just actually last month, we opened up a new call with the Department of Science and Technology on water disaster management, also with input from ISRO, to see if we can use space technology in especially floods and droughts to work together on that. And also with there's another program called Eureka Global Space, which we're working with InSpace on to see how can we use downstream applications in the water and in the agri-tech business. So we try to intensify our work together, and we think that we have common problems together, so we want to work on common solutions together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dhoya. So what I'll do now is, now that we've introduced, I'll of course give the first charge to Caitlin. But before that, we'll set the tone of the discussion that will happen for the next 15 minutes or so, and then we'll open it up for Q&A with the audience. International cooperation, especially in the space sector, has been on 3 tiers. One is the military tier, one is the civilian tier, and one is the academic tier. The academic tier is sort of the low-hanging fruit, which is easily doable, achievable, and a lot happens in it. But in a conference like this, where a lot of industry-led discussions happen, we tend to forget bridging the academic and industry partnerships between our 2 countries. So that is where it all begins. All the skilled workforce that eventually works in the militaries or in the industry, it comes from academia. The basic training starts there. So without throwing any curveball, the first set of interventions that I seek from you all is, what sort of university to university partnerships do you foresee? There's a lot to be solved in terms of global challenges. There's a lot to be attended in terms of space exploration. And that's where science counselors, commerce counselors, their role, it magnifies immensely. So I'll start with Caitlin first.
Thank you. Thanks again. I guess up front I should say, of course, I would be remiss in my duties today if I didn't absolutely spruik the Australian space sector and the sort of thriving, growing civil space industry back home in Australia, and of course involving itself here in India. As Science Councillor, I see this quite often, the difficulty in that industry-academic link. I don't know if we have a really solid answer to it, but we're of course doing lots. You know, we're well aware of the problem, and we've got lots of programs in that space. The very top level, Indian students are now the largest source of international students in Australia, just overtaken China's international students. That's really important. Indian diaspora, or people of Indian origin, is also our largest growing diaspora in Australia. We have this incredibly diverse Indian population, incredibly talented and educated and skilled, and they're really embedding themselves in Australia and Australian industry. We have lots of university-to-university MOUs. I spent half a day actually last week at IIT Bombay, which has a joint PhD program with Monash University in Melbourne, and they're doing some incredible technical work, 2 years of, or 3 years of PhD study at IIT Bombay, and then 1 year of their choice as part of their PhD program in Australia, which is producing great results. And of course we also have, you know, the other, so that's the university level. Also in that sort of research level, we've got something called, well, we have lots of national science and research institutions in Australia, but we have something called the CSIRO. I won't try and say that acronym because I will get it wrong, but they do industrial science and research. They've had a couple of MOUs with people like Niti Aayog, CSIR, TERI here in India, and doing a huge amount of work. In a similar vein, we have our other research institutions and science agencies. For example, Geoscience Australia, which does world-leading Earth observations, has MOUs with their counterparts here in India as well, the Geological Survey of India. So we have that covered as well. So that's the sort of, you know, government science to science agencies. The other element I will say is we also have a suite of programs really targeting that sort of nexus between industry and academia and that startups, and how do we support that commercialization agenda. So actually, Prime Minister Albanese spent a week or so in India in March, and at the conclusion of that visit, he and Prime Minister Modi jointly, thank you, announced the opening of the first round of what's called the India Space Investment Initiative, ISI. And that grant application program only just closed, I think, 27th of June. So those are all under application. But what that is it's a grant program for Australian firms, research organisations or startups to partner with an Indian firm here and put forward a proposal where they can get some funding to help test or pilot their projects. So that's another sort of element we're targeting to build Australian capacity, leverage sort of Indian expertise, but also grow those partnerships across the board. So we have students and diaspora, government, science agencies, industry, and trying to sort of connect that pathway much better.
Thanks a lot, Caitlin. With Australia, India has a comprehensive strategic partnership, and the level of cooperation that we have, right from academia up to security cooperation, that entire broad spectrum is based on greater people-to-people interaction, which is fostered by education. And education in the space sector, an ever-evolving space sector, is becoming the fulcrum of space diplomacy. So I now invite Hirokazu Mori to, brief us about what is Japan doing to attract academic and scientific partnerships, and how do you see India-Japan relations progressing hereafter?
Sure. So I think most renowned Japanese academia in space sector is usually like one or two universities called the University of Tokyo and also Kyushu Technology, QTech, usually offers lots of like a small manufacturing course to all the like, Asia, Southeast Asian countries, and actually there are like several tens of students come to Japan to learn how to make satellites, also like how to make subsystems for rockets, and then after they graduate, they usually go back to their own country, Thailand, Malaysia. Then some of them already graduated 20 years ago. So some of them started a space agency, or they're working for government to start like a space-related like project. So that's I think one of the biggest international collaboration Japanese government or academia has with other countries. And then the other aspect, so Japan and US and also like India has several like a project-based collaboration between through space agency we worked on several projects. Chandrayaan is also JAXA and ISRO worked together. I think those are the major project or activities Japan used to been working last several decades.
So what Hirokazu just mentioned, India and Japan are working on a mission which would go to the south pole of the moon sometime in the next 3 or 4 years.
Right.
That mission is called LUPEX.
Yep.
Yeah?
LUPEX.
Yeah, LUPEX. So that's again one of the indications of space diplomacy on an agency-to-agency level. Yet at the same time, when it comes to payloads that go onto such spacecrafts, they usually come from academic institutions or scientific research institutions. And the data stream that these payloads generate, they flow not only into agencies but also into academic institutions, based on which they generate scientific research papers. And that again is one of the major incentives for any country to not only increase its R&D rankings globally, but at the same time sort of proliferate high tech from space sector to the non-space sectors. A lot of times these payloads can be spun off into technologies that could be used here on Earth. So there is a great incentive in international partnerships, and thank you for introducing that with Japan. I now invite Gurvinder talk to us about the India-Canada potential in space.
Thank you. So I will answer the two-tier. First, I will answer about the academia and industry relationship. In Canada, what we have, like there is a perfect example of University of Toronto. So what they have done, they have a one R&D or international collaboration, space university and space projects. And out of that, what they did, they developed some payloads and they developed some technology. And there's a spin-off, a commercial branch of university. So what they do, they commercialize it and they bring the industry to work with the university, but on a commercial basis. So that incorporates a both act of commercial plus academia together into one umbrella. So advantage industry gets is they get the advantage of the payloads and technology, which is funded by the university or academia, but at the subsidized cost. So advantage is the industry gets the much advantages in terms of commercialization. Now, coming back to the collaboration between India and Canada, I think it goes back to the radar sat time, and ever since time, the Canadian government and Canadian Space Agency has been providing the radar sat imagery free of cost to ISRO and all the agencies. And on top of it, all the disaster management and all the imageries are being provided free of cost to all the industries and as well as the academia. Then on the second tier, we have a program called KITA. That's a university collaboration program between Canadian universities and universities in India. And along with, there is a one condition that they have to bring a commercial partner. So that means the industry is part of that collaboration. So there is some portion is subsidized by the Canadian government and some part is subsidized by the Indian government. So they both work together to develop some project, and each year there is some specific technology and area of expertise is being targeted into that program. And finally, then we have MOU with the Canadian Space Agency and India, and where they have about 10-15 areas of collaboration that includes the space exploration, deep space exploration, and under that vehicle is available if we want to explore. And as I said earlier, there is much more to be done and can be done, and unfortunately no has been done. But I would like to do forum like this should help to accelerate the dialogue.
Thank you, Gurvinder. Samir, you represent USIBC, one of the foremost bodies when it comes to space cooperation across the commercial sectors. You mentioned about NOAA. Now, NOAA happens to be a oceanic research entity. Yet at the same time, it is also in charge of space economy. Now that is very interesting. Oceanic Research Agency in charge of space economy. We can't think like that here in India. Please tell us how has that transpired?
So to be very honest with you, it's still getting operationalized, and on the NOAA side, it's really understaffed. A lot of people actually don't realize NOAA is the second leading space agency in the world after NASA. So they do a lot of geospatial work, and it's probably equivalent to the Ministry of Earth Sciences on the Indian side. So they do a lot of space-related activities as well. And I actually wanted to throw light on the first question that you asked to the co-panelists. So I think yesterday there was this panel discussion where there was a lot of discussion around how India should have this vision strategy for the next 25 to 30 years. And I think once that vision sort of, is brought out by the government and industry together, it paves way for the skilling part of it. It makes life easier for skilling students and startups, and have a lot of collaboration in these areas between American side and the Indian side. So for example, if you look at the United States, there is something called USRA, University Space Research Association. So these are trade agencies that are engaging between industry as well as student bodies, and whatever technologies are developed, they're immediately accelerated and a market for them is created. So there is a lot for India to learn. I mean, if you look at IndusX that happened recently, so this is a synergy between Indian and American startups. So both MOD and DOD are involved, and they were the ones who actually proposed the names of the startups to participate in this event. So I think the signals are clear from both governments that there needs to be a lot more engagement, but how it translates, it's totally dependent on what our requirements are in India and how we are going to define that over the next few decades. And then it becomes so much more easier for any kind of synergy in that sense.
Thank you. Dhoya, India and Netherlands have been space partners for many, many years. Earth observation has been one of the core areas of the cooperation. And more recently, we find a lot of space lawyers. Some of them are also attending this particular conference. They have done their higher education from Leiden. Tell us about that. Tell us how can we sustain this cooperation that we have, cherished for so many years.
Yeah. The space law program in Leiden is really world famous. It's a great program. And I think just as Caitlin was saying, also in the Netherlands now, the biggest group of students from outside of Europe, at least, is now Indian. So they've also just overtaken the Chinese group. So I see a trend here. This is happening more and more abroad. Actually, India Today has got a weekly special about it this week, about Indian students abroad. But if we look at academia, space collaborations, we're looking very much at it from three strategic levels. We look at government to government, which is the big programs. They come with millions, but they go slow, and sometimes they don't really lift off in the way that you want to. Institute to institute, so we're trying to connect our best institutes with the Indian ones, and then also at the individual level. And individual levels, sometimes it's just a handshake, but sometimes actually these are the drivers behind these bigger programs. And I think on the government programs, I already said there's a lot of collaborations with DST and with ISRO. So this is kind of long-term collaborations. And they lead to really nice programs. We've got one now which is called CropLens, in which the industry and academia, they've come together doing academic work, but looking at farmers in Andhra Pradesh and their rice crops, and looking how actually they can have a better grip on what they're doing daily. So they've come up with an app which uses all kind of satellite data for the farmers to predict when they should plant and when they should sow, but also it gives insight in pesticides and in diseases that are upcoming, so that the farmers can do much better in that field. And also on the institute level, I think India loves MOUs, and we also love signing them, but we always try to make like the next level, see if we can charge these a little bit. So now our model is more and more having MOUs with a financial bundle attached to it, so that the two universities have got maybe 20 or 30 lakh a year, so that at least there can be some seminars, there can be some interaction, there can be some travel, there can be some student exchange, so that they can work on things. And now with the Technical University of Delft and also the IIST, There's, for instance, one program, and the students came up with these lunar zebros, they call them, and it's like these moon rovers. And they're really cheap, they're really simple to make, but they work together in swarms, so they can do all kinds of missions on the moon. So now they're talking also to ISRO to see if we can launch such a program. It's nice programs, really inspiring for the students, and maybe it's also a breakthrough discovery.
Thank you. Shall we open this to question and answers? Any questions from the audience? Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much, first of all, for asking questions related to academics and industry, because I'm a student as well.
I'm a professor.
Yes. So the thing is, over here, like I feel kind of out of the group because I come from a natural sciences background. I'm a geology graduate and I'm planning to pursue planetary science. So I wanted to ask about the future of this field. It's not just in research sector because I'm aware of that, but I want to know more about the application, like planetary scientists being in the space associations, organizations, or even the commercial sector, you know, having a role directly from academics and then into the industry. So how do you see the future of planetary science or geology in collaborations between India and the other countries?
Okay, yeah, I'll let Gurvinder. Okay, I'll answer you because I'm a planetary scientist. So, the opportunities are galore, quite a lot. We've signed the Artemis Accords, and the basic premise of Artemis Accords is lunar exploration. We need a lot of instrumentation there, instrumentation that would understand the lunar geochemistry, that would understand the mineralogical composition. We are interested in building habitats there, but with resources that are available on the moon. Now, this is known as in situ resource utilization. So, a lot of mining related, a lot of construction related science and tech needs to be developed. And there are numerous opportunities both in basic natural sciences as well as in applied sciences. Now, it is only a matter of time that we should be able to, we as in the entire international community, should be able to deploy it. We have Japanese companies building rovers, Australian startups are getting there. So Canada is deeply involved in robotic arms. They have a massive robotic arm on the International Space Station. We've known the Americans, they've done they made great forays there. So the Dutch, they're part of the European Space Agency, and they've visited comets and planets and Mars and whatnot. So with more and more space agencies coming in, putting in money in a commercial manner, there are numerous opportunities coming in for you.
I'll just supplement to your thing too. I think her question is very valid, and we see it is mandatory for all colleges to have planetary science and as well as physics. Not to a full physics, so at least they can understand that space, how the thing, because they may not become, but they can be a intermediary workforce for the space sector. What we have, we are only producing space engineers, but we are not producing those of people who are working in different verticals. So we have identified this gap, and we are talking to academias and their various universities, and in that we will say, okay, this why don't you bring this element into also your curriculum, so that you give some more credit to them. And the industry and academia partnership also we are building on that. It's very important to understand when you do the space science, you must understand the physics very well. You must understand how the planetary science, how the planets move and all around. So it's very, very, so that we feel that it should be there. It was being taught in, when I was in school about 30 years back, maybe about 40 years back. That time it was being touched in our secondary classes. They talk about this. But now I feel it is out from curriculum. I don't know why. Thank you.
I think most of the things are already been said. I'll just add my 2 cents here. So far, if you look at all the research and development done on any exploration, everything was done, initiated by the universities and the researcher in the universities. Today, if you look at all the instrumentation, 90% of the instrumentation are being developed by the universities, no matter what the industry says. Behind the scene, every time is the universities and academia and institutes and the professors who are working on this. The idea comes from the requirements. And all the students who are work or grads or undergrads, they are part of this institute and they're part of this research and development. So this is a very, very important and key role to identify, as Professor Chaitanya said, that now we are in the era of lunar mining. We are looking at going to the moon, we are exploring Mars, and we are looking at the comets. And we had a successful exploration of landing on the comet. And that to study the comets, to study the extraterrestrial bodies. So to that, absolutely we need all the geophysicists and all the data and all the people who can contribute to the development to take it to the next level. So there's no end of the future.
Any question? If not, all our speakers are available with us for the rest of the afternoon. You can catch them, you can ask them the questions, and we are here to answer those. Thank you so much. You've been a great audience.
Thank you very much indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, we once again thank our distinguished chair and moderator and all the eminent speakers for those wonderful deliberations we had in this session. We now close the proceedings, requesting everybody to kindly come forward for a group photograph. And ladies and gentlemen, kindly remain seated as we straightaway move to the next session, which is on sustainable space operations, tools and business models. We would request... Yeah.